A Coast Guard lieutenant who described himself as a white nationalist pleaded guilty on Thursday to federal gun and drug charges, prosecutors and court filings said. The lieutenant, Christopher Paul Hassan, 50, who was arrested in Maryland in February, had been plotting to kill journalists, Democratic politicians, professors, Supreme Court justices and those he described as leftists in general, a federal prosecutor said in a previous court filing. He was indicted that month on charges of unlawful possession of silencers, possession of firearms by a drug addict, and possession of a controlled substance. But in court filings the prosecutors have called those charges the proverbial tip of the iceberg, describing him as a domestic terrorist who intended to murder innocent civilians on a scale rarely seen in this country. At a hearing on Thursday, Lieutenant Hassan appeared in federal district court in Greenbelt, MD, and entered a guilty plea under an agreement. I am grateful for the hard work of the agents and prosecutors to obtain this guilty plea, Robert K. Herr, the United States Attorney for the District of Maryland, said in an emailed statement. I look forward to the opportunity for the government to present additional evidence to the court at sentencing. Lieutenant Hassan's lawyer, Elizabeth Oyer, said in a written statement after the hearing that the plea reflected that he accepts responsibility for the offenses he did commit, unlawfully possessing firearms and abusing prescription drugs. Like many Americans, Mr. Hassan has struggled with addiction to a prescription opioid painkiller, she continued, adding that the case had been mischaracterized and sensationalized. It is not a domestic terrorism case, Ms. Oyer, an assistant federal public defender, said in the statement. Mr. Hassan was not plotting a terrorist attack or any of the abhorrent acts that the prosecution has repeatedly speculated about but never actually charged. She depicted him as a peaceful, loving family man who accepts that he will be fairly punished for the crimes he did commit. The court held an initial appearance for Lieutenant Hassan after his February 15 arrest, and his appearance on Thursday was identified in a court filing as a rearrangement, which suggested a plea agreement had been reached. The FBI, the Coast Guard Investigative Service and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives all took part in investigating the case, Mr. Herr said. Mr. Herr's statement said Lieutenant Hassan admitted that from at least March 2016 through early February 2019, he used email accounts to order at least 4,650 pills of tramadol, an opioid, without a prescription and from illegal internet-based distributors, who had the drugs shipped to his residences in North Carolina and Maryland. He admitted that he then concealed the tramadol in other packaging at his residence and work, the statement from the United States Attorney's office said. Agents discovered some of the pills in a search of his home, work and backpack. They also found 7 rifles, 2 shotguns, 4 pistols, 2 revolvers, and 2 silencers, one of them assembled. Magazines and hundreds of rounds of ammunition were also found, the statement said. Hassan knew the firearm silencers were not registered in the National Firearms Registration and Transfer Record, and that they did not have serial numbers, as required by law, the statement said. He faces a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison for each of the 3 charges related to firearms and the firearm silencers, and a maximum of 1 year in prison for possession of tramadol. Sentencing has been scheduled for January 31. Lieutenant Hassan was assigned to the Coast Guard's Washington headquarters, where he worked as an acquisitions officer since June 2016 after he moved to Silver Spring, MD, from North Carolina. From 1988 to 1993, he served in the Marine Corps, and he spent 2 years on active duty in the Army National Guard, court filings show. When they announced his indictment in February, prosecutors said Lieutenant Hassan was an unlawful user and addict of a controlled substance, and therefore prohibited from possessing the 2 silencers and 15 firearms found during a search of the basement apartment where he lived with his wife in Silver Spring. From at least January 2017 through January 2019, prosecutors said, Lieutenant Hassan visited white supremacist and neo-Nazi websites. He also studied the 500-page manifesto written by Anders Behring Breivik, a far-right Norwegian extremist who killed 77 people in Norway in July 2011, according to a previous court filing that requested he remain in detention after his arrest. In writings discovered on his computer, prosecutors said, Lieutenant Hassan said he preferred a focused violence and described his musings about how to cause the maximum disruption to society. I am dreaming of a way to kill almost every last person on earth, he wrote in a draft email in June 2017, the request for detention said. Ms. Oyer has said prosecutors have not filed terrorism-related charges because they have not found any evidence to back up those allegations, the Associated Press reported. Prosecutors also found a computer list targeting potential victims, with internet searches of justices, Democratic lawmakers, television journalists, and political figures, the detention request document says. The list included, among others, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Maxine Waters, Senator Richard Blumenthal and several candidates for the 2020 Democratic nomination.